So I'm doing a little tutorial on this super popular game everybody is talking about, everybody is playing, called Fortnite. And today I'm not much of a gamer, so I've actually never played the game, to be honest, but yeah, what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna recreate one of the weapons in Adobe Illustrator. I'm gonna guide you through the process. So I found this image on Google, and I'm gonna be using it as reference material. I'm not gonna trace it because I feel like just taking a good look at the picture and trying to recreate it is just way more fun. So let's get started. I'm gonna draw the top weapon, and I basically created a new layer. I selected the pen tool because I'm gonna do this tutorial only using the pen tool, and that's yeah, it's gonna be a challenge, but let's get started. So basically I'm just, like I said, looking at the weapons and trying to come up with something that looks like the weapon in the image. And if you start out, just focus on the main shapes, and then we're gonna add some detail later on. So this is just me clicking, and while I'm clicking, I'm also looking at the picture. So this is pretty straightforward. Just take your time to get the basics right, because that's the most important part of this tutorial. The shape needs to be correct, otherwise the weapon won't be recognizable, which is kind of important. So yeah, once again, just using the pen tool, looking at the image and trying to come up with something that looks like the picture. So now, as you can see, this little thing over here is pretty symmetrical, so I'm just gonna cut it over here using the cuts tool. It's the C shortcut on your keyboard. Now I will select this and I'm gonna hold down the Alt key, and then we can move the points that we're going to use to reflect this. So if you turn on the preview, you can see now we're reflecting this using a vertical axis, but we want to switch this to a horizontal, and we're going to copy this. Now just move it a little bit up using the arrow keys on your keyboards. So if you have questions, or if you don't understand what I'm doing at some points, just leave me a comment. I try to read all the comments and give feedback, and if you need help, I always try to come up with a solution, because I think it's important that people can also can take a look at these tutorials and actually make something. So just let me know if you have questions, and don't be afraid to ask. So yeah, I think we're getting here. And as you can see, some proportions aren't really correct, but you can still if you use the selection tool, or the direct selection tool, it's this little arrow. You can select the anchor points that you want to move around, and then you can just use the arrow keys. It's really basic to drag them to a point that you feel satisfied with. Same goes for this one. This distance is also a little bit too big, so just move it up there with the direct selection tool. That's the A shortcut on your keyboard. So let's move forward. So this is starting to look like the image that we're looking at. And this is really basic Adobe Illustrator stuff. Everybody should be able to do this, because this is just the pen tool, and I'm not using fancy equipment. I'm just using my mouse and just clicking, dragging and dropping until I get something that looks okay. So I try to keep my my talking as interesting as possible, but at some point there's nothing much to say, because I'm just dragging and dropping points using yeah. So yeah, the basics are looking pretty good. Getting along pretty fast. As you may notice, I'm trying not to use the zoom tool. I'm just trying to figure out the basic shapes of this weapon. And it's a big challenge not to zoom. Somebody on Twitter was comparing it to buying a donut and not licking the sugar coating, which is it's a really good comparison if you think about it. Is that a word? I don't know. Comparison? I have no idea. You know what I mean. So what I just did while the video was in fast forward mode is basically the same thing I was doing when we started this video. So I'm only using the pen tool to recreate this weapon, and later on we'll add some color, definitely, and some more details, because right now it's looking pretty basic, pretty boring, and I feel like we can add some great details in this kind of illustration. So just have a little bit of patience, and then we'll get to the fun part. Like I said before, the most important thing when you're trying to create an illustration like this is that it needs to be recognizable. So you need to get the basic stuff right before you move on to the fun part, like adding color and details and texture. It wouldn't make any sense to start adding it before the part is completely finished. And once again, if you have questions or if you don't really understand what I'm doing, just leave a comment and I'll help you out. Like this part, for instance, there's like kind of a little bit of texture on there, so maybe we can just create a stroke using pen tool. Select the stroke, hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, and then just drag it, holding down the Alt key, release it, and then you copy a shape. This is really basic stuff, but maybe some people didn't know this. And now in the menu, select the blend tool, the W on your keyboard. Click the first line, and then click the second line. And now you see this line popping up. Hit the return key on your keyboard, and then this window pops up. It's a blend option window. We're going to select specific steps. We're going to turn on the preview. So as you can see, there's the one line added in the middle, and maybe you want 2 or 3 lines. I think we're going to go with 4 lines like this, and just hit enter. So this is a really easy way to add fun little details. So now we're gonna create this cable thing, just using the direct selection tool to drag those little anchor points from the strokes, and then you can create rounded shapes, which is really convenient. So I'm gonna and this cable can be just a stroke using the pen tool. We can add some detail later on if we want. So just make sure there is a nice curve to it, something like this. That's good for now. If we have time, or if you have the energy, you can adjust it later on. So this little area over here is also pretty easy to recreate. Just use the rectangle tool. That's the M tool on your key, the M key on your keyboard. I'm sorry, or this little thing in the toolbar, and just drag and drop a rectangle. Bring down the stroke weight, and then using the direct selection tool, we're gonna drag and drop these little circle things to give it more of a rounded edge. Now I'm gonna add one line like this. Maybe bring the stroke weight a little bit down. Hold down the Alt key, it's the exact same thing that we did before. Drop it, then go to the blend tool in the menu, in the toolbar. Click on the first line, click on the second line, and as you can see, this is too much. So with the blend tool selected, hit the return key on your keyboard, and then we're gonna bring these steps down. I think it's one. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need 5 lines in between. Turn on preview, and then you get something like this. And if you want to adjust it, just once again using the direct selection tool, select one of the lines, and you can reposition the strokes. So now let's move on to the front of the weapon. And these kinds of illustrations are really fun to create, because you can do some crazy stuff with it later on, like create your own version, make some stickers, I don't know, whatever you want. Just don't sell it, because you'll get in trouble, because this is definitely copyrighted material. Just be creative with it, and then be able to do some cool stuff with this illustration. This needs to be a little bit smaller. So this might seem kind of boring, but it's actually fun if you have some time to kill, or you just want to train your pen tool skills. Then this is the perfect way. Because the pen tool it's not difficult, but it's also not easy if you're not used to using it quite often. So you need to train it, and the best way to train it is to practice, and this is a great way to practice. So yeah. Select this stroke and add some more weight so it matches the other strokes. This needs to be a little bit to the left, so with the direct selection tool just select the piece that you want to move. Using the arrow keys, just place it wherever you want. This looks something like this. Needs to be a little bit longer, so once again using the direct selection tool, just bring it down a little bit. The same goes for this, using the arrow keys, bring it down. Now we're gonna add this thing over here. All using the pen tool still. Just bring. So basically you're only using the pen tool and the direct selection tool, and maybe sometimes some different tools like the blend tool, but you're basically just going to focus on the pen tool and the direct selection tool. Okay, so this is, now we're going to move on to the actual front of the weapon. Just going to give it one last check if everything is okay over here. This needs to be a little bit different. Okay, no, this needs to be a little bit different. This needs to be a little bit longer. So once again, direct selection tool, and just move it all the way up over here, like this. Perfect. So moving along, bring this down like this. Double checking if it makes sense. Yeah, so I'm gonna go this way and then go that way again. Perfect. And if you're struggling, if you don't have any experience in Adobe Illustrator or with the pen tool, just give it some time, because like I said before, you needs practice. 2, 3. So now I'm gonna reconnect these points, because like I did before, I created one and then I cut this piece to drag and drop it using the Alt key. So now I'm gonna hit Control J or Command J if you're using a Mac. So direct selection tool, select these points overlapping each other, and then Control J to reconnect. Now to add some depth, I go like this. just do the exact same thing. Hold down the Alt key and drag and drop. Now you have this part of the gun. So I just created this stroke, but I feel like the stroke weight is too high, it's too heavy, so I'm gonna select the eyedropper tool. It's the I key on your keyboard. And with this stroke selected, I'm gonna just click this one to get the exact same weight as this stroke. So back to the pen tool, taking a look at the weapon. Now we're gonna go this way. So let's go like this, and then add an angle. This part is a little bit longer. Like this. And then just if you want to move along with the line, just select the pen tool and then click on the last point that you created, and then you can just keep on adding to the stroke. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible for maybe some people that don't have any experience but just want to create something in Illustrator. So for the people that know all this stuff, I'm sorry, but yeah, I think it's always useful to be as detailed as possible in a tutorial, because I also watch tutorials when I don't understand something, especially when it comes to After Effects, and I hate it when people do tutorials and don't explain the stuff that they're doing. So that's why I'm being very detailed in all the steps that I'm taking. And if you feel like I'm talking too much, or I'm giving too much info, just let me know in the comments. Or if you feel like the exact opposite, like my steps aren't really, or like my explanation isn't really clear, once again, just leave me a comment and I'll help you out as soon as I can. Okay. I think it should be, it just needs to go down. I'm gonna select this stroke, and I'm gonna add a point over here. So with the direct selection tool, or like, it doesn't really matter which selection tool you use, just select this stroke, go to the pen tool, it's the P on your keyboard, and just add a point over here. Now with the direct selection tool, I'm gonna just drag and drop this over here. It's just little details, but it's important. Okay. So we're almost done with the basics. Stroke like this. Something like, maybe like this. Yeah, that makes sense. And once again, using the eyedropper tool, I'm sorry, to just to click on this stroke, and then you have the exact same stroke. Maybe this needs to go a little bit over here. So now I'm using the selection tool, hold down the Alt key, drag and drop it over here. Okay, I feel like this is maybe a little bit too long, and this needs to go up just a little bit. Same goes for this little piece. Okay, so last part of the basic shapes, and then we're gonna get to the fun part, which is, for me personally, adding color and detail. But if you're still watching and if you're still trying and figuring out the basic shapes of the weapon, I hope you're doing a great job. And feel free to send me like the result of what you came up with. I'm always excited to see what people created if they watch one of my tutorials. So just gonna some people are sending me messages, I'm sorry. So as I was saying, if you want to share your result with me, just send me an email, or I don't know, send me a direct message on any platform you like, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I'm around. I try to read all my DMs, just might take a little bit longer sometimes. Yeah, so this is fun. This is fun little tutorial that I love doing stuff like this. So this is like my favorite waste of time. I can also sit on the couch and watch a movie, but I much rather do something like this. I think we're almost there. So as you can see, it's pretty easy. I think we're like 30 minutes in, and we actually created the outlines just looking at the weapon. I mean, we didn't trace it, which is, I'm perfectly okay with people that trace stuff, don't get me wrong. I also do it when I need to get something really like exactly right. Then it's so much more easier to just trace it. But I feel like if you want to challenge yourself, you can just do it like this. Don't try to trace it, and it will be more satisfying in the end, because this is not exactly the same. There will probably be some little mistakes, I don't know, but that's like the whole fun part of doing stuff like this. The most important one is challenging yourself, and become better at using the pen tool, for instance, or just looking at stuff and recreating it. And this is more impressive, if you ask me. If somebody asks you, did you trace this? You can just say no. Just took a look at it and just came up with something that looked like this. So for the last parts, this is basically gonna be the same thing all over again, using the pen tool. Just try to get the angles right. That's the most important thing in an illustration like this, is the angles. And then once you get those right, you can start playing with the details. And like I said many times before, that's the fun part. So just give me like 5 minutes, and then we'll get to the coloring part. So I think it needs to be like this. So just bring this down, direct selection tool, move around a little bit, and then just add some depth. What's next? There's like this thing over here. So this comes down. Now we're gonna add this part. That's gonna be something like this, I think. I should have closed my window because there's a lot of noise outside, but I think it's we're past that point, so yeah. The noise is already in the video, so it doesn't really matter at this point. So last little piece is bringing in some depth over here, just once again using the pen tool, and I think we're done with the basic shape. Let's just take a quick look and see if it's actually looking like the weapon in the image. I'm just gonna take some time to like take a look at my angles, and just once again using the drag and the direct selection tool, and just dragging around some points like this. You can do the same thing, and once again, you don't need to, if you want to create your own version of this weapon, just feel free to do so. I mean, you need to have fun doing this. That's basically the most important part of creating illustrations. It's having fun. So adding some little details already. I feel like we couldn't like do it like this. It's more fun. Like just a little line can bring so much more detail and to an illustration. Like over here, nobody will notice this, but that line needed to be there. I also see that there are some really tiny screws over here, so I'm gonna add those screws. Maybe a little bit less weight in the stroke. 2 points. Hold down the Alt key and drag it down, because there's also a screw over there and one over here. So I think we're pretty close. And the more you do this, the better you will get at stuff like this. Like I said before, I'm repeating myself like at least 5 times. Practice a lot, and then you get better at this. So some parts are maybe a little bit off, like maybe this section is a bit too big, but it doesn't really matter. Like I said, we're just having fun. So, and maybe this area is also a little bit too small, like this needs to be over here, and then this can move over here, so we can add the little screws. 1, 2. So yeah, this area looks kind of okay. Adding some little detail lines. Select this stroke and just move it up a little bit. This is really, I think this needs to go in a little bit more. Like this gives the weapon some more, like a more aggressive look. Maybe a line like this, like a little bit of depth. looks kind of okay. So yeah, maybe we can select this little stroke, and now we're going to select the rotation tool, so transform rotate, and this window will pop up. Turn on the preview if you want to see what you're doing, and rotate this screw a little bit around, like 15 degrees. So this little screw, we're gonna put like a small circle in the center, like this. Okay, direct selection tool selected. Select the top part of this and then just move it 1 pixel or 1 point to the right or to the left, you can choose. I'm gonna do left. Need to add a little line over here, like this. And I see that this needs to move up a little bit over here. And this angle is a little bit too big. So I think it should be like this, and I forgot a little part. So I think this is like a knob that you can turn, so it should look like this. I'm gonna add some little lines in there. And now just copy it like this. So this looks kind of okay. I think we got all the little details except this one. So just create a rectangle like this. Add a stroke inside. Just hold down the Alt key and drag and drop. Adding some more detail lines. You don't need to do this if you don't want to. If you want to keep it really basic and really clean, you can just skip these steps. There are some holes over here. I think they're at a 45-degree angle, I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit steeper. So just create a stroke, add some more weight, and then make sure that you have the round cap selected and not the butt cap. So then you get these rounded edges. Hold down the Alt key, drag and drop, and do the same for the last one. There's also like this sticker over here, this hazard sticker, so I'm gonna create this using the pen tool, create a stroke, like this, and just create an, like with the direct selection tool selected, select this left anchor point and just drag it until you get this little guide that says that you dropped it in the exact middle. Now we're gonna select this part of the triangle, and we're gonna transform it, we're gonna reflect it. But before you do this, you need to so you select the reflect tool in the menu, in the toolbar, I'm sorry, and now you hold down the Alt key and you click with your left mouse key on this little anchor point. Now this window pops up and you can rotate it vertically. So just copy it along the vertical line. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to use the shape builder in the toolbar, and we're going to cut away these parts. or not. I'm gonna use dynamic sketch. So now we need to go over to the type tool and just find a font that is like kind of rounded around the edges, because I think the Arial rounded bold is perfect. So just drag it inside this triangle that we just created. And as you can see, there's like this edge around this triangle. So what I'm going to do is select the triangle using the selection tool. And now we're going to go to Object, Pad, Offset. This window pops up, and just turn on the preview so you can see what you're doing, and just bring it all the way up to 15 points. And now we created the exact same triangle around the first triangle. Go back to the stroke panel and bring down the weight a little bit. You can also select the direct selection tool and then drag and drop these little knobs to round the edges. So this is way too big. I'm gonna bring it down a little bit. Still too big. Scale it down until it fits. So yeah, I think now we have basically all the stuff that we need to before we need to finish before we start adding color. So we need to add just one screw over there. So just select this one, drag it and drop it. It's maybe a little bit too big, so go to transform, scale, and bring it down a little bit. I think 85% should be okay. So perfect. This looks kind of okay. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna bring the stroke panel over here. If you don't find this, it's under window, and then look for stroke. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna add some profiles to some lines just to give them some more like dimension, because if you use all the same strokes in an illustration, it's gonna be boring to look at. So just play around with this tool, and just you can select the profile that you like. I'm just mixing it up a little bit, as you can see, applying different profiles to different strokes. And as you can see, while I'm doing this, the illustration is getting more like there's more dimension to it. It's fun to look at. It's not boring. So yeah, I definitely suggest that you just play around with this a little bit. Especially for stuff like this. If you take a look at it right now, it looks kind of weird, like not really clear what it is. And like just add a profile and then you can flip it across. Maybe a little bit less weight, and then you have something that looks like this arrow hole. Add a little stroke over here, like this. Yeah, that looks okay. So especially for these detail lines, you can add like different profiles and just keep on playing with it. This line, for instance. These lines also need profiles like this, or maybe not. So it's completely up to you. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna show you a different tool that adds more dimension to strokes. So it's called the width tool. It's Shift W on the keyboard, And what this tool does is it allows you to manipulate, yeah, that's the word, your strokes like this. So you can just add points and just drag it and drop it. And as you can see, the illustration gets more dimension, more, it's way more fun to look at. So yeah, you can just play or just do whatever you want. Some people like illustrations that have like the exact same stroke width and all over the illustration, but I'm not really a big fan of that. So it's completely up to your taste if you want to do this or not. Just give it a try. If you like it, just yeah, play around with it. If you don't like it, just skip this step. That's maybe a little bit too little, so it needs to be something like this. So yeah, this was already fun to do. If you guys have like more suggestions, like different stuff you want to see, just let me know in the comments. All the feedback is welcome, because I really like doing this, but it's really difficult to do it right. It's really difficult to do a good tutorial. It's a really underestimated skill, because usually I use a lot of different shortcuts, and I don't actually work like this. Like I use Wacom tablets to create my illustrations. So yeah, this is also a different way of working for me. So yeah, just let me know if you enjoyed it, if you learned something, if you want to see some more stuff like this. This feedback really helps me to build an audience that likes stuff like this. So I think I'm not gonna be adding too much variation in the strokes. I'm just gonna keep it simple and clean. You guys can keep going if you like. Maybe just some little details, because it's also important that I don't make this tutorial too boring or too long. And as I'm going along, I see that there are like some little details missing. So these screws, for instance, just dragging them, dropping them, just copying. And that should be a line over here, I think. I don't know why. It feels like there should be a line. So okay, I'm just gonna add one more detail line over here, and now I'm gonna just move along, because now we're gonna color this illustration. This is, like I said many times before, the fun part. So I'm gonna select all the strokes and all the shapes that we just created. I think there's a screw missing over here, so I'm sorry, those little details need to be correct. So select the gun that we just created, and now we're gonna copy it. So I don't know if you can do it like this. Just hit Control C or Command C on your keyboard, and now we're gonna go to the layers, and we're gonna hide the layer that we're working on right now. So we're gonna keep this as a backup. I'm gonna create a new layer, and we're gonna paste this one in the exact same spot using CMD-F or Control F on the keyboard. Lock this one, and now we're gonna work with this one. So what I like to do is, and a lot of people say that it doesn't make any sense, at this point I'm just gonna rasterize the image. So I'm actually making a pixel-based image, which doesn't really make any sense if you think about it. And now I'm gonna live trace the illustration that we just created just hit this little arrow over here and select silhouettes. This will pop up and then just hit OK. So I really like what this effect, like live trace, is doing. As you can see right over here, it's actually like making some little parts less detailed, and this gives the illustration more of like an actual illustrated look and feel, which is really nice. I usually never put my outlines in 100% black, so I'm gonna select something more purplish, something like this. So the next step is going to be the actual coloring. Select the illustration that we just created, go to Object, Live Paint, Make. So now, as you can see, these little squares, they kind of changed. So now you know that this live paint is active in this illustration. So what's live paint actually doing? So if you select swatch and you select live paint in the toolbar, which is K on the keyboard, so this little paint bucket, you can start adding color to the illustration. So I'm applying this swatch to the weapon using the paint bucket, and if I move my arrow keys around, I can select different swatches in the swatches panel, and I can add like different colors really fast. Like this needs to be darker, this needs to be lighter, so I just use the arrow keys to add color really fast. Like this. And at this point it doesn't really matter how the color is looking. We can adjust it later on, so just move along, and maybe a little bit darker over here, like this. This screw can be a little bit lighter. Just do whatever you feel is right. If you think the red, like if you move along, if you move over the illustration while you have the live paint option active, and you hover over the illustration using the live paint bucket, then as you can see, now I'm going to color this area. But if you think the red, like the red stroke around it is highlighting the pads that you're gonna add color to, if you think it's annoying, with the live paint tool selected, hit return on the keyboard, this window pops up, and then you can turn off highlights. Just hit OK, and now yeah, the highlight's gone. And as you can see, this is really fast, and this is a really clean way to add color to the illustration. There's no faster way, I think. Perfect. So this needs to be kind of bluish, greenish. So you can also, you don't need to use the swatches, just the swatches. You can also go to the colors mixer, mix your color, and then just add it using the live paint bucket tool. So this looks kind of okay. Add some color to these little screws. And up until this point, we didn't use the zoom tool at all. It's kind of a challenge. I mean, you can zoom as much as you want, but I feel like it's a fun way to challenge yourself to try to come up with solutions. If you don't use the zoom tool, you're gonna notice it. It's really difficult because people are so used to doing it. So this looks okay. I'm gonna select the illustration, go back to Object, Live Paint, and I'm gonna expand it. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna use the Magic Wands tool. That's this window. If you don't find this window, go to Window, Magic Wands. So I'm gonna enable fill color, and I'm gonna set the tolerance to 0. Hit enter, and then now I'm gonna click on the outlines, and I'm gonna cut the outlines and paste them in a new layer. So Control X or Command X, and as you can see, the outlines are now cut away, and I'm gonna paste them in a new layer in the exact same position using Command F or Control F, like this. So if you hide this layer, you only have the color left. I'm gonna lock the outlines, and this is the color, and this is the backup, and this is the red. So this is looking kind of okay, but I feel like some color might need some tuning. So just keep the Magic Wand window open and always keep the tolerance to 0. Select this color, for instance, and go to the slider and just fine tune it, because I feel like there should be like more like grayish, greenish kind of color over here. Same goes for this color, just needs to be a little bit lighter. Also, this color needs to be like, there's some green in there, some blue. That looks kind of okay. This can be a little bit lighter. As you can see, this looks better already. I'm gonna create a new layer above the color layer and below the outline layer, and we're gonna call this highlights. Just make sure all the other layers are locked so you can't make mistakes. Select the pen tool and just create a stroke, add some white color to it. To add some highlights to the weapon. And you can just play around with it. It's not really important how it looks, just play with the stroke width. You can see there's some highlights over here. Maybe some highlights over here. That was my alarm, I'm sorry. Some highlights over here. Just don't be afraid to add as much detail as you like. And this gives the illustration more like of a dynamic vibe. It's basically just white strokes, which is really easy stuff. Some highlights over here, add some stuff over here. Yeah, So I hope you guys are enjoying this. I think this is a pretty basic tutorial. It's just a lot of repetition, a lot of the same stuff. But yeah, it's fun to do, so that's the most important thing. If you want to add some different color to the highlights, that's also possible. Like there's some blue kind of stuff in there, so just go to the color slider, select blue, and then maybe add some stuff over here. Like this should be darker. So this can actually be the same color as the outlines. Like this. Once again, just dragging and dropping until I get something that looks okay. So I'm not gonna add too much details at this point. What you can do is you can also create a new layer on top of the outlines. Also call it highlights, and maybe select the color of your stroke and just select like a color that's a little bit lighter. And now you can add some fun details on top of the strokes, of the outlines, I mean. Like this. Maybe this one's a little bit too heavy. So over here we can add one. So this is all up to you. If you don't want to do this, you don't need to do this. Some more little details. There can be one over here too. So yeah, it's also a little bit too heavy. Okay. So I feel like this is looking like it should be looking. Now we can add some little details. Create a new layer on top of the color layer. Details. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna open a brush library, and it's really simple. Just click this little arrow and then hit this little button. Open library, artistic. I think it's this one. No, it's not this one, but you can easily navigate the next brush library, and we're gonna select this one. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna use the pencil tool. It's this little tool, the N key on your keyboard, and just with your mouse drag and drop a stroke. And now I'm applying some more weight. Object, expand appearance. And now we have all these pads. What we're going to do is just delete some of them, like this. Add a different color using the color slider. Now you have like these nice little details inside your weapon, and you can add as much of these as you want. It's completely up to you. Like this. should be some detail over here. It's perfect. So yeah, basically doing the same thing all over again with the details. Cool. I think this is pretty much finished, for me at least. You can add more detail if you like. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It kind of looks like the weapon in the reference image, which is cool. So yeah, if you have questions, once again, just let me know in the comments. And I'll help you out as soon as I can. I'm also just, you can download my source file if you like. I'm putting the download link in the description, so if you want to download this file, feel free to do so. Just use it for learning purposes only, because yeah, it wouldn't be cool if you use this as your own version. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you guys liked it. Leave a thumbs up if so, and if you didn't like it, just dislike the video. But once again, thanks for watching.